Beruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Nun Vov Amud Beis at the very top. Our Gemara is discussing again that we have a city that we want to determine its tchum. So depending on the configuration of the city, we will then decide where the borders are and from there count 2,000 amos. So we had a brayso that explained when you have a city that's a rectangle, you leave it the way it is. We don't then make that the width is the same size as the length, making it into a square. We leave it as it is, and we determine the tchum based on the rectangle. Also, if you have a square, the brayso told us that even though you have a square that is not going lefi the directions of north, south, east, and west of the world, but rather it's off to the side, it's a square like a diamond, and you might think to then make a square of north, south, east, and west of the world surrounding this diamond square. We don't say that, we leave it the way it is. The brayso continued on Daf Nun Hey Amud Aleph and said if you have a rounded configuration of a city, then you make a square around it. Our Gemara is going to discuss how you determine that square and how you ultimately determine the tchum. Says the Gemara, Tonu Rabbanon, Hamrabeya es ha'ir, one who wants to then square off this rounded city, oisa kemin tavla merubas. He does so as a squared tablet. So you have a rounded type of city, a circle, and around that you make a square. V'choizer merabeyas hatchumim v'oisa oison kemin tavla merubas. And then what you do is to make the tchumim, you go 2,000 amos in each direction, and then you make a square around that. So it comes out like this. It comes out that the rounded area, we're talking about an area that is 2,000 by 2,000 amos. That's the example that we're using. So you have the rounded area. That rounded area, we have the whole diameter to be 2,000 amos, whereby, of course, each radius, if you would stand in the middle of this circle, each radius between where you are standing in the middle of the circle to the end of the circle would be 1,000 amos. So it comes out to be that you have then the square that is going around that circle, but you have a space between the circle and the corners of that square. So how will you determine that space? So if you want to draw a line between the middle of the circle and the end of the circle, which we said is a radius of 1,000, to get to the corner, you'd have to multiply by 1.4, which would give you really a line of 1,400 to get to the corner. Okay, that's one part. We said not only are you making one square around the original circle of this city, but then you make tchumim. So tchumim, again, is in each direction, and then we're making a square around that. So if you take the area, we said, of the circle, which is a diameter of 2,000 amos, we said it's talking about 2,000 by 2,000 amos. And here we're talking about making, a tchum of 2,000 amos in each direction. So again, in order to then, after you make the square, then get to the diagonal, to the corner of the square, it's not sufficient to then make the 2,000 amos line. You'd have to also multiply that by 1.4. To get to the corner, the diagonal would be 1.4 times 2,000, giving you 2,800. And that's what the Gemara explains now. When he will measure, again, we're talking about a circle, that is the configuration of the city, and that is going to be 2,000 by 2,000, not 2,000 by 2,000 because it's a circle, but rather it's going to be a diameter of 2,000. We square that in, then we make tchumim in each direction. We take 2,000 amos in each direction to make the border, and then we square that in. Says the Gemara, when he measures this, lo yimdoi be'emtzo hakeren alpaim amma mipnei shehu mafsid es ha'azovis. When he measures, he will not measure from the middle of the corner 2,000 amos, because then he would be losing that area. In other words, if you want to then make the tchum The Techum, we said, is 2,000 amos in all directions. If you say 2,000 amos also to the corner, you'll come short because it won't reach the corner. So therefore you have to add to get to the corner if you want to make a diagonal line to the corner to be able to close it off. So that's what the Brisa is saying over here. Ella, what should you do? Maybe tavla merubas shehi alpayim amma umenicha bekerem alchsoina. Rather, what you should do, this is a way of measuring this area, is take a box, a square of 2,000 by 2,000, and put it on each corner. Then you'll determine what is going to be then the way of getting to the corner, the diagonal line. Nimtzeis ha'ir mistakeres arba meos amo lekan va'arba meos amos lekan. It will come out that when you do this, then you'll get an additional 400 when you go from the circle to the square around it. We said the open space between the circle and the corners of the square. You'll then multiply 1.4 to the 1,000, which is the radius. And you'll get to then 1,400. You have an additional 400, then the line itself, then the diameter, then the radius. Nimtzu techumim mistakrin ches meos amos lekan v'shmona meos lekan. And it comes out, and of course, in terms of the techumim, when we add that outer square, that you'll have an additional 800 amos on each corner, because again, you have the 2,000 amos tchum going in each direction. But we said to get to the corners, you have to add times 1.4, which would 2,800 line to get to the corners. So therefore, you'll be measuring an additional 800. So you'll get 800 plus the 400. You'll then be marviach 1,200 based on these calculations. Nimtzu ha'ir v'techumim mistakrin 1,000 umosayim lekan ve'elef umosayim lekan. It will come out that we're going to then have an additional 1,200 because we added the 400 and the 800. Omar Abaye, and Abaye then explains that we said that we're talking about we're talking about a city that is 2,000 by 2,000. If we want to then further illustrate this, let's try to take a look at the diagram over here on the left side in Rashi. So we said again, this circle is a city, and that's what we're talking about. It's 2,000 amos is the diameter. But you see that when we square it off, there's a space between the circle and the corner of the square. So we have to take that into account. How do we do that? We multiplied the radius, which is 1,000, by 1.4. We got then an additional 400. So instead of it being just 1,000 radius, we said it's going to be 1,400. Then we made an additional 2,000 amos in each direction, which would be the techum. And again, we square that off. And then again, you see that there's going to be then the regular line that will go 2,000 amos in each direction. But then to get to the corners, we'd have to make a diagonal line. And that was going to be longer than, of course, the lines in each direction. So each direction we have 2,000 amos. But to get to the corner, we'd have to then add 800. So that's the calculation that we're seeing over here, that we have an additional 400 plus 800, 1,200 additional amos in our calculation. Says the Gemara weiter, the Gemara now brings in regards to the Are Levim. There are 42 cities of Levim. They also have a techum, a border that surrounds it, of 2,000 amos. It has 1,000 amos that is next to the city as being an open area called a migrash, which is uncultivated. And then beyond that migrash is another 1,000 amos, which is cultivated to be fields and vineyards. Says the Gemara, Tanya, Omar Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yosi, Techum Are Levim, Alpaim Amo. The Techum that goes outside of the Are Levim, in all sides, is going to be 2,000 amos. It's going to be 2,000 amos wide and 2,000 amos also in its length. Say mehen 1,000 amo migrash. Take away 1,000 amos of the open area that we said is the area of the techum, which is next to the city, surrounding the city, an open area uncultivated. Nimsa migrash revia. Come out to be that the migrash, this open area, will be a revia. The Gemara have to explain this because it's unclear. What does it mean that the migrash is a revia? The Brisa goes on to say, V'hashar sodois ukromim. But the rest of the Techum outside of the Arei Levim is going to be the cultivated area on the other side of the Migrash, which is going to be sodois and kromim. Minohanimi, the Gemara first asks, where do we know that the Migrash indeed is going to be 1,000 amo? Omar Rava Domar Kro. The pasuk says, we'll read the pasuk in its entirety. Umigveshei ha'orim, and the open areas of the cities of Levim. Asher titnu la Levim mikir ha'ir v'chutza elef amasoviv. That's what the Gemara quotes over here. Mikir ha'ir, from the walls of the city. Again, the city of the Levim, v'chutzo, and outside, that means the first area that is outside the city is elef amo saviv, is 1,000 amo around. Omra Torah, the Torah says, sabev es ha'ir be'elef, surround the city of Levim with 1,000 amos of width, which is going to be the migrash, the open area that is not going to be cultivated. Ask the Gemara, nimtza migrash revia. We said, Rabbi Yossi, that the migrash is a revia. How could that be? Revia palga have. It's a half. Because we said the entire Techum is 2,000 and the migrash is 1,000. So we see that the migrash is only half, with not revia. Says the Gemara to explain. Omar Rava bar Ada Mishucho Asavrali. He said, a surveyor came and explained me this. Mishkachas lo b'mata dahavi trei alfei. He said, we're talking about a case where we have a city that is 2,000 by 2,000 amos. That's the city. So if we want to then find out what is the entire area of this city, including the Tchumim, we have the city, we said, is 2,000 by 2,000. So the entire city is 2,000, and in from east to west, let's say, plus the Techum to the west is 2,000, and Techum to the east is 2,000. So we have an entire east to west, 6,000. And if you go north to south, you have 6,000. So we have 6,000 by 6,000 amos. Comes out to be 36 million squared amos. That's the entire area of the area that we're talking about of this city, including, of course, the Tchumim. So Gemara now works out to try to then deduce how do we get to then the Migrash being a Revia. Says the Gemara, Techum kame have. What is the Techum that we're talking about over here? So we know that Techum, he said, is 2,000 in all directions. So it comes out to be 2,000 and 2,000 by 2,000. And we have four different sides. If we say, in other words, if you have make a square on each side, in each direction, a square outside of the ear, then we have 2,000 by 2,000, and we have on four different sides. So it comes out to be 2,000 by 2,000 is 4,000 square amos. And we multiply that by four different sides, we come out to be, we have now 8,000 square we have 2,000 by 2,000 is 4,000. Four sides is 16 million square amos. And that's what Gemara says. Shitzar, it comes out to be 16. Kronois kama havyon. The corners, how much do they come out to be? Now we're talking about, we had a square on every direction, but you left out the corners. So you put another square on each corner. Again, each square is 2,000 by 2,000 amos. Comes out to be 4,000 squared, 4,000 million squared amos. And you have that on four different corners. So we come out to be 16 million squared amos. So that's what the Gemara says. Now, Shisa, that's 16. Dal tamnya ditchumim. Take away 8 million squared amos, which is the tchumin. In other words, how do you get to this calculation? Here we're talking about where you have 2,000 amos, and you have 2,000 amos by 1,000 amo, because here we're talking about the techumim of the migrash, which is 2,000 amos long and 1,000 amos wide, and you do that on all four sides. So you have 2,000 by 1,000, and then on four sides you have 8 million squared amos. That's taking away tamna, ve'arba de kranos, and you have 4 of the corners. Again, the 4 of the corners, that comes out to be, you have 1,000 by 1,000, which is referring to the migrash of the corner. And then you have that on all 4 sides, which comes out to be 4 million squared amos. So that's 4 and 8 gives us tresar. So it comes out we have 12. We have 12 that we're coming, and we're then saying we're taking away from the original calculation. So it comes out to be, says the Gemara. The Gemara now says, if you're going to do that, then nimsa migrash revia. Still, does it come out that the migrash is a revia? Certainly not. Says the Gemara, tfei metilsat ninhu. It's even more than that, because you just took out the migrash as being 12, and we said the whole thing is 32. So it's even more than a third. Not even a quarter, but it's more than even a third. Says the Gemara, I see arbo demato shodi alayhu. The Gemara says, take 4 meaning to say the area of the actual city itself, which it says 2 by 2, and shodi alayu, and then add it to the 32 that we said before, which is really an entire area of 36. So therefore, we have 12 is the migrash, and 36 is the entire area. Still ask the Gemara, kati tilsa have. That's only a third. If you have 12 of the migrash of 36 of the entire area, that's 1/3. Says the Gemara, misavris b'ribua kamar. Who says that we're talking about a ribua, that we're talking about a square? Bi'igula kamar. We're talking about that the area of the city, the Are Levim over here, the Ir Levim is talking about a rounded city. And therefore, kama meruba yaser al ha'igul. How much is the square more than the circle, than the round circle? Revia, it's a quarter more. So dal revia minayu, take away a quarter, which comes out to be, we had that the migrash was 12, but now since the migrash is encircling the city of refuge, granted outside of the migrash, the other part of the border, which is, we said, Sodos and Kromim, that's going to be rain square, but nonetheless, the migrash will be encircling the circled Ir Levim. So we have to then take away part of that which you said before, a quarter. So we said before, since it's 12, the migrash, now we take a quarter away, which would be 3 away from 12, we're left with 9. Pasha luhu tisha, we're left with 9. Vetisha mitilsin veshisa rivoy have. And 9 from the 32 comes out to be, from the 36 comes out to be 1/4, exactly what Rabbi Yossi had taught us. So it comes out that with all of this calculation, this brisa, that the brisa stated over here, that the Techum Ari Levim, we said is 2,000 by 2,000 amma, we're able to then come out to say that the migrash indeed is going to be a revia.